Great.
Yeah,
My
good.
name is Natalie Wolfram, and I work at the University of Montana in a program called We Are Montana in the Classroom, where we create opportunities for faculty members and professionals at like our presenter today, Seth Barnes-Smith, to connect with high school students around the state. And we are in this distance learning festival celebrating Shakespeare's first folio, which is essentially Shakespeare's collected works on tour from the Folger Library in Washington, D.C. This is really exciting for us here on UM's campus. If you're in Missoula in May, please come check it out. But without any further ado, I'll introduce Seth Barnes-Smith, who's going to share with you a bit about Shakespeare and the French language. So thank you for joining us today. Seth.
Bonjour! Il y a un peu de délai entre les deux. Ok. Comment ça va? Ça va bien? Ça va mal? Ça va. Ok. D'accord, excellent. Donc, aujourd'hui, on va parler de Shakespeare, mais en anglais, donc ça va, n'inquiète pas. D'accord? So I want to talk about three things. Yeah, trois choses. First thing, how we see how French has affected English language. If Shakespeare was aware of this, and how did he play with it in his writing. And the third thing is, how has Shakespeare affected French literature in turn? Donc, un peu de moi, a little bit about myself. Donc, ça c'est où j'ai habité. This is Cholet. This is where I lived in France. Does anyone know what kind of architecture this is? Go and shout it out.
Gothic.
Yes, voila. This is called, shocking, it's called Notre Dame de Cholet. So it's another lady, but not in Paris, right? Voila. So I'm with the Modern and Classic Language Department. My focus is actually French pedagogy, which means how you teach French, especially with early elementary. I've lived in Ireland for a year, I lived in France, and I've also been to Haiti, where it's an interesting mix of Creole and French culture. And I've just been to a couple of places, different cities. Donc, the question we're going to focus on to begin with is, how do languages change and evolve with time and people, right? So that we're going to do, on va faire une activité, ouais! Ouais, merci, ok. Donc, combien vous êtes? Vous êtes combien? 1, 2, 3, 4?
8.
8? I only see half of you. Where is the other half?
Over here. We can see you.
Ah. Approchez le drapeau, hein? Move over to the flag side. Oh, bonjour, coucou! Ok. Voilà notre activité. C'est qui le prof? Où est le prof? Derrière. Ok. Bonjour, madame le prof, hein? Bien, bien, bien. Ok. Bonjour. Ok. Nous avons une mission secrète, ok? D'accord. On va faire 2 lignes. D'accord? Chaque étudiant.
Là-bas.
Ça marche? Ok? Et donc, c'est vous allez écrire un message secret, ok? En anglais ou en français, comme vous voulez. Ok? Vous allez passer le message, ok? So, vous, vos étudiants, we're gonna play telephone. So how it's gonna work is, Madame the prof, she's gonna write down a message. She's gonna tell it to the first person in both lines, and then without yelling it, the first person in the line is gonna turn to the next person and whisper it into their ear. And the first person, if you don't hear it, you can ask one time. You can say, comment? And then you can repeat it, okay? The goal is to pass it as accurately as possible to the last person. When it gets to the last person, they're gonna write it down, and then we'll share, okay? And we'll see what happens. Okay, donc mettez-vous debout. Levez-vous, levez-vous. Très bien, fantastique. Formez 2 lignes. 2 lignes. Parfait. s'il vous plaît, tournez et dites vous êtes fantastique. Go ahead, turn to your neighbors and say vous êtes fantastique. Bravo, c'est vous. Ok. On est prêt? Madame?
Oui, je suis prête.
Okay. So secretly, she's gonna. Oh. Okay.
You say correct her.
So only. Well, you gave it to them, so that's okay. But the idea is, yeah, the idea is that they only transmit it by hearing. So you whisper into their ear the message that you wrote, and then she whispers into the next person's ear, and they whisper to the next person. Comprenez-vous? Okay.
Voilà.
All right. The people at the end of the lines, write it down. What you heard. Écrivez ce que vous avez entendu. Hein.
Why'd you have to make it so long, Madame?
It was time.
Ah, c'est la vie, classe. La vie, elle est difficile. Hein?
Got
Okay, you got it right. Is it written? Okay, ready? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so how about the group closest to the drapeau? What did you get at the end? What did it sound? What did you get?
Still working on it.
Oh, well, let's wait. Attendez. Minute, minute. Tous le nez. Tous les oreilles.
The lag is interesting.
Oui, ça change.
I just heard random words. I was like, oh yeah. I understood what you were saying. I got it. You have to say it. Okay, it's close. It's close.
Okay. Prêt?
Nous avons l'anglais à la bière.
Nous avons l'anglais à la bière.
That was not my fault.
Ok. Et vous?
Nous avons les langues françaises de six Molière.
Wow.
Alors, madame, qu'est-ce que vous avez écrit?
Ah, j'ai écrit nous aimons la langue française et Molière.
Voilà. Donc, très bien fait. Excellent. S'il vous plaît, tournez et dites, vous êtes merveilleux. Excellent. Asseyez-vous, hein. Rasseyez-vous, s'il vous plaît. Asseyez-vous. Donc, so think about in that like 1 minute, with over 4 people, how much it changed. Think about over time, how do languages evolve over time? Thinking about hundreds of years, and when the more people you meet, how does language evolve? So obviously, language can't stay the same because people change, so language changes, right? Right? Or society changes. So real quickly, you might hear some people say, "Oh, language is the way people speak now is bad," and it's just getting worse. But language is always changing. The word smog 50 years ago wasn't a thing. Smog is a blend of smoke and fog. It didn't exist, right? We create words all the time. However, right, you want to be educated so that you can understand as many kinds of writing as possible, right? Because a lot of manuals, a lot of academic works, they're written in the more official language, a more prescriptive way, but it doesn't mean it's the only correct way to speak, right? So let's look at the two languages. We have French and we have English. Who knows French is what kind of language?
Roman.
Lemons. We call it romance. Bonjour. Why is it romance? Is it because it's so très sexy, hein?
Land-based.
Latin based, because the Romans were from Rome. It's not Roman. It's not the Roman language. It comes from Rome. So it's romance, right? And English, as opposed to French, is a Germanic, because it's not German, but it comes from a Germanic language, the predecessor. So real quick, what's interesting is European history. It's one little continent, right? Europe is smaller than the United States, so that they've been affected by the same groups of people. So when I got a point here, see? When the Romans came to Britain, who would they have found? I'm Arthur, king of the Britons. And the Britons was a Celtic group, right? They spoke a type of Celtic language, right? And then next came the Vikings, who invaded in the around 700, 800s, right? Which would have been, the Viking language would have been Norse, would have been a northern Germanic language. And then after that, who invaded in 1166 or 1066?
Normans.
Guillaume
The Normans. Guillaume le Conquérant. Oui, Guillaume. All right, so with that, you have the Normans who came from the Vikings, and the French said, please stop the other Vikings from coming, and I'll give you some land. You can live here, but protect us. Hence the development of Normandy, right? And then later we also had the Enlightenment, which brought more Latin and Greek-based words into our language, right? Lunar is a word from the Enlightenment because we talked about the loon and the moon, right? The Renaissance itself is the French word, rebirth. And then you just have a general changing over 500 years. Who knows, when is the beginning of the modern language? Who is the father of modern English? Pensez, réfléchissez. He's a writer. Shakespeare is considered the father of modern English, right? So we say that modern English started, boom, right around 1500, right around Shakespeare, right? However, we have French, and it's cut off. Whoop. It's interesting because French itself is a Romantic language, so it's Latin-based. When the Romans invaded, when Vercingetorix, he was a Gaul, right? And the Gauls were a Celtic group. Also, the name from which France comes from the, who invaded later on? The Franks, right? France comes from Franks. So we have a Romantic influence, we have a Celtic influence, we have a Germanic influence, and a Scandinavian influence. Sound familiar? Right? The big difference is, right? The big difference is we have English, which started as a Romantic language, as a Germanic language, and we have French, which started as a Romance language. They were both affected by the same groups, and at the end, there's a lot of parallels, but the closed classes of words don't change because those don't take on new words, right? That's why they're so different. Voilà. But that being said, let's look at modern connections between French and English. Between when the Normans first invaded, bringing French language to England, when after that the court of England was ruled for 300 years in French, right? And also just the close relationship between the two countries brought a lot of connections. So real quick, the word for this is a cow, but its meat is une vache, but in English?
Cow.
Cow. And the meat from a cow is? Beef, right? What's the French word? Boeuf, right? Why is it different? Because the royalty, the people who ruled England for the 300 years after the Norman invasion, would have spoken French. And the royalty would not eat cow, the royalty eat boeuf, which changed to beef, right? The royalty would not eat sheep, the royalty would eat
Mouton.
mouton, right? Which changed to mutton, right? They don't eat chicken, they eat poulet, right? So this is where we get these big differences between the language. One is Germanic, and the other is Romantic based, right? Another fun suffixes. Say woo, rah!
Woo!
Excellent. Excellent. Vous êtes des ninja de grammaire. Alors, vous avez words that end in ent, right? Ant in French is the present participle, meaning it's ing, right? So pendant is something that is doing what?
Hanging.
Hanging, right? A pendant hangs from your neck. Dormant is a volcano that is sleeping. Restaurant is something that restores you. Brilliant is something that shines. Attendant is someone that waits. Consonant sounds with. Consonant, it sounds with a vowel. Débutant, someone that's starting. All these things are age. Age is a suffix coming from a verb changing to a noun. Garage is the place where you gare the voiture, the place where you park the car. Lavage is when you are cleaning something. Adage, average, bagage, voyage, sabotage. Sabotage! N'est-ce pas? Yeah? Because if you sabote someone, it means you sabotage them, right? You throw a shoe into their mechanics and it... Okay? Also, from Old French, so these are more recent. Older French, though, finish would it come from the verb? Finir. So what's the plural? What are the plural stems for the IR verbs? Nous, fin, is, son, n'est-ce pas? So in French, the is shifted to an ish. Ish, ish, right? Finish, finish. Nourrice, nourish. Languisse, languish. Anyway, ishes tend to be French, right? Or from, so that's old French influence. Interesting. Tournez à vos partenariats. Vous êtes magnifique. Super, huh? Donc, my favorite word personally is the word gargoyle, but in French it's, who can pronounce this? Une. So let's take it one chunk at a time. Ready? Gar. Gou. Gargouille. Voilà, gargouille. And it comes from the verb gargouiller. Gargouiller, which means to gargle, right? So this word changed to English. We borrowed this word. Gargoyle is something that gargles, right? Or gargle comes from the French word. That's my favorite. Gargouiller. Gargle. Voilà. And itself, garga. Garga. Kind of like, what's this? Maintenant, this is the... The nuque. Yeah. It's the neck. En français. Ah, j'ai mal à la...
Gorge.
Gorge. Gorge. So gargle. Gargle is something from your neck, like a throat sound. N'est-ce pas? N'est-ce pas? Voilà. Okay, never mind. Donc, étirez-vous, hein. Levez-vous, s'il vous plaît. Levez-vous, hein. Levez-vous. On va étirer un peu, d'accord? On va compter à 4. 4, n'est-ce pas? On va secouer, secouer. Donc, on va faire 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0. Excellent, s'il vous plaît. Et maintenant, ramassez l'énergie. Et baisse l'énergie. You can't see it, but I'm bending my knees, right? Ramassez l'énergie, raise your knees as you stand up. Et baissez l'énergie as you kind of get back down. So, très bien, très bien. Asseyez-vous, s'il vous plaît, asseyez-vous. Pop quiz! English is what type of language? Germanic. French is what type of language?
Romantic.
Name one of the first groups that lived in Britain and France.
Celts.
The Celts. Who invaded them? A major group that invaded them.
Anglo-Saxon.
The Vikings, also Anglo-Saxons, also. From which the France gets its name?
France.
The Franks, right? Excellent. Très bien fait. Donc, so interesting enough, English is one of the only great European languages that has this double derivation, right? Meaning it has a lot of roots in both Germanic and Romance. Why do we call something that the end of a line is called the, like the bus, the end of the bus stop is the bus
Stop.
bus stop, stop being the German word, or end being a German word, but like with the T, the I, like the not the ender. Arnold Schwarzenegger is not the ender. He is the
Terminator.
Terminator. So here we have a double derivation. Termine, from terminus, from the end in Latin. And end, like in modern German, Wochenende means week end, right? So end is Germanic. Terminus, terminate, terminating, that's French-based. So we have both, they mean the same thing. And interesting enough, I'm speaking to modern German people, it's easier to understand modern Dutch, which is a Germanic language, than it is to understand modern English, because other Germanic languages were not as affected as English was by French. Voila. Okay? So evidence that Shakespeare was aware of this double influence on the language. So we'll look at that. Right, we'll discuss this a little bit. This is based on an article from George Watson, Shakespeare and the Norman Conquest, English in the Elizabethan Theatre. So it's up to you. I think whether you know that Shakespeare is actively aware of this, or whether it's just a theory. On peut penser, n'est-ce pas? We could think about it. It's up to you to decide. Si tu crois, ou tu ne crois pas, n'est-ce pas? Okay, so we have this idea from Henry IV. Hey, look, I'll send right here. Okay. On what submissive message art thou sent? Submission, Dauphin! 'Tis a mere French word. The English warriors wot not what it means, right? So the word, what's the word in French for submission? Make it sound French. Soumission. Soumission, voila, right? So he's right. He's saying right in his play, French submission is a French word. Surrender is a French word. So how can an idea exist if the word doesn't exist in the language? Good point. So, whether he did it on purpose or whether it was an accident, it's up to you to decide, right? Some other ideas, we have this play, Macbeth and Love's Labour Lost, right? Often one thing we see that Shakespeare does is he'll couple them together. He'll go on this long explanation, use these really long Latin-based words, and then follow up with short words, right? The multitudinous sea is incarnadine, making the green one red. Oh, okay. So, let's start with incarnadine, right? So what's the heart? Carn. What do you think that means? Think char. Carnal. Have you ever had chili con carne? Right? What's in the chili? Chili with meat! Bravo! So incarnadine, carne, like la char, is like flesh. So it's like fleshly. So incarnadine is like in flesh. What color is in your flesh? What color is your flesh? It's kind of
What, pink?
pink. Pinkish. So it actually means pinkish, and then he rephrases it red. So it's like a reddish pink. Some people are more red than others, depending how much you're embarrassed, right? Right? Voila. Okay? Also, we have in Love's Labour's Lost, one of his latest work, he'll go almost for, it sounds a nice word, he'll do Germanic, romantic, soft and sensible, sweet and musical, drowsy and with the harmony, right? Well, you'll notice that the Latin ones, they tend to be longer, and the Germanic ones, they tend to be shorter. So one theory is he was aware of it and he was purposely coupling. Another theory is he just liked the sound of it, because one was short and one was long, and he was doing it on purpose. Voilà. Question.
Non.
Pas de question. Excellent. Vous êtes fantastique. Okay. Oh, I already did that. Sorry. So, think about this double derivation. Is it still existing today? Does it still matter, right? When you feel, how do you feel when you feel outraged?
Angry.
Mad. You feel angry, right? So the word anger is the Germanic base, and outrage, rage, A-G-E, French-based word, right? What do you feel when you ask a request? Or you have a request?
What?
Question is also a French word. Another one, what do you do for a question? A question.
Ask.
Ask, right? So ask is a German-based word, and request I ask you to be quiet. I request you to be quiet. Right? German, Latin, or Germanic and Latin. Okay? Donc, miroir. I'm speaking much faster than I realized, like half the time. Okay?
That's okay.
Donc, très vite, with a partner, sortez un papier. Sortez un papier. Take a 5-minute break and do language activities. It's so fast.
So it's one for every two.
Yeah, avec un partenaire. Oh wait, I'm gonna go back.
Des crayons? On a des crayons?
Aha. Okay. I'd like you to take a minute, reflect on words like these. Try to think of a word that is a French base or Latin base like these ones, right? And then write it in the modern, or write it in the Germanic base. Try to think of like what would be the equivalent that sounds more Germanic. So you have terminus versus end. You have pendant versus hanging. You have dormant versus sleeping. You have lunar versus moon-ish. Right? Something like that. Just spend like 2 minutes and brainstorm with your partner. Come up with some ideas, and then we'll share it together. Okay? Et allez-vous!
Okay.
Oh.
So we think of words that end in those things. Like that. About oh, baggage.
I think they would call like lavage. Oh yeah.
That makes sense.
Because it's like,
It means washing, doesn't it?
yeah, well, that was so long.
Hotel.
Mom can't even think of it.
I don't have anywhere it's not a word.
Night cavalier.
Could it be anything, or do
Yeah.
it have
Oh,
to
yeah,
go
yeah,
silent?
no.
Just anything?
Wait,
Wait, pilot is
So,
French.
basically, it's thinking of a French one.
Well, like a plane versus. Yeah, similar. Yay!
Sounds like horse in the French word.
Oh,
You know,
but it could have something,
Well,
like,
it's called avocado.
everybody-
Avocado. Avocado.
you know,
We call lawyers
elevator
avocado.
comes from like,
Can we please call it?
British
I'm
word
like,
for
I'm going to avocado.
Would that have
school.
is that Germanic then?
I would guess that's a Germanic word. Unless you think it also comes
I
from
wanted
the
to
bay.
say
yeah.
Um,
Well, if I could just think of any words.
I know, like, I've seen some
Like all of a
before, and
sudden,
I've made
I'm
comments,
just like, my
now it's
mind's
like,
so
how do we want to say it? I was like, what? Versus lively. I don't know, like, lively is just like.
Let's take about 30 more seconds, folks.
I would agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
We have nothing.
Oh, we have one. Yes, we had aviation.
Yeah, we were
DOS planes.
Oh, no.
Play!
Say that again, because you were muted.
Okay, one more time. Est-ce que vous êtes prêts? Ah, ouais. Non, avec enthousiasme. Oui, je suis prêt.
Oui, je suis prêt.
Ok. Je le crois.
Oh yeah, just be.
Je le crois. D'accord. Can you share some examples? What did you come up with?
Oh, wait on. So in English, mansion and house.
House. Yeah, German. There you go. Très bien. Oui, vas-y.
Yay.
Oh oui, un petit applaudissement, s'il vous plaît. Oh. Ouais.
We got
Ok. Autre?
We got horseman and cavalier.
Ah, voilà. Cause cabo. Voilà. Très bien. Petit applaudissement. Ok. Autre exemple?
We had all avion.
No, aviation.
Oh, and then aviation.
Well, aviation and like planes. It's like
Right.
planes. I don't know.
Voilà. Très bien fait. Un petit applaudissement, s'il vous plaît. Ouais. C'est tout? Was that all the examples?
We have two more.
Go ahead.
Book and literature. Scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Mm-hmm. Très bien fait. Oui, excellent. And it's really interesting if you study German at all, you'll see words pop up and you're like, oh, these ones are Germanic based because Haus and aviator versus even in modern German, Flater is to fly. So en chauve-souris, what do you call it? A bat is a flying mouse. Fledermaus, n'est-ce pas? There you go. So voilà.
Ah.
Okay.
Elevator and lift.
Oh yeah, lift. There you go. The idea, yeah, Luft gucken instead of like levitation, anything with lev, Latin based. Exactly. Très bien. Ok, excellent. Donc, maintenant, allons partir de le carré français. Let's look at French literature. All right. So, what are the French dom-toms? You can say quoi? Oh, okay. A dom-tom is a département outre-mer. So an overseas department. So like France is divided into departments instead of states, and some of them are across the sea. So Guadeloupe, Martinique, Guyane. What? What else in the Caribbean? What else used to be part of French colony and is no longer?
Haiti.
Haiti, oui, exact, tout à fait. Donc, so we'll talk a little about La Tempête de Shakespeare, right? So real quick, if you haven't read The Tempest from Shakespeare, who's read The Tempest? Okay, that's okay. I'll act it out for you. Are you ready for it? Okay, ready? Oh, I messed it up. Hold on. Oh, les boutons! Okay. Je suis le duc de Milan. Tu m'as trahi. Oh no! Tu es exilé. Oh no! Et maintenant, je suis sorcier. Oh, hocus pocus. Je suis le duc qui a trahi l'autre duc. Oh non, mon bateau est contre et maintenant c'est ruiné. Ah! Oh, regarde mon frère, regarde la belle fille. Oh, on va se marier. Oh, da ba ba da, ba 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 da. La fin. Okay. So based on the fact that it ends in wedding and everyone getting off the island, is it what type of drama, what type of play is it? You have two major types. Comedy or what's the other one? Or tragedy. Yeah, thank you. Was it intelligent? So comedy or tragedy, which one is it? Comedy, right? Because it ends in happiness, right? So in general, real quick, so you have the Duke of Milan, and he is betrayed by his brothers. Sound familiar? And he gets moved to an island, and when he comes on the island, he discovers a spirit that's trapped in a tree named Ariel. It's a man. That's a male form. Or I guess he doesn't have a gender because it's a spirit. Never mind. Ignore that. And he discovers a creature named Caliban. And how Shakespeare describes Caliban is a savage and deformed slave And later, the Prospero, who is the duke who was betrayed, says he's disproportioned in his manners as in his shape. What would that mean if you describe someone as disproportioned in his manners as in shape? If you've already described and said that they're not very shapely.
Bad manners.
Bad manners, right? And in this sense, think more of manners in general, like, what does it imply? He wasn't not just good at eating with a fork. More than that, right?
The way he acted.
Yeah, the way he acted means he wasn't a nice guy, right? He was a D-bag, let's say that, okay? Il était un con, un gros con, n'est-ce pas? Un gros con. So anyway, why is that? Well, Shakespeare says that he's the offspring of a witch and the devil. That his mom was Circe's, and that she procreated with le diable, and her offspring was therefore Caliban, which is right here. Okay. At one point, so when he comes to the island, he adopts Caliban as like a son, kind of, or more. It's hard to say because he's not equals. He's like a creature, so kind of almost like Quasimodo and Frollo in Notre Dame de Paris. That he's like a son, but he doesn't really treat him like an equal or like a person. He treats him as a thing that he has pity for, and he's such a good person for doing it. Well, anyway, at one point, Caliban tries to sexually assault his daughter, and so after that, he pushes him away, he demonizes him, right? So this whole thing is about two kinds of revenges. You have Prospero, the Duke of Milan, who's trying to avenge his brother, and who makes him land on the island and breaks his boat, and all this scheming. And you have Caliban, who's trying to get back at Prospero for hurting him, right? Well, how does this... Oh, let's look at this real quick. But Caliban isn't just this really bad character. He has good reason for not liking Prospero. If you're looking at it, he lived on the island before he came, right? He said, "This island is mine by Sycorax my mother, which thou takest from me. When thou comest first, thou strokest me, and made much of me, would give me water with berries in it, and teach me how to name the bigger light, and how the less that burn by day and night. And then I loved thee, and show thee all the qualities of thou. The first springs, brine pits, and barren space and fertile. Cursed be I did that soul. All the charms of Sycorax, toads, beetles, bats, light on you, for I am all the subjects that you have, which first was mine own king, and here you sty me in this rock, while you do keep from me the rest of the island." Right? So you have, he adopts him as his son, but in exchange, Caliban shows him everything. He shows him where everything is, where the good water is, where the berries are, and then Prospero teaches him proper education, right? He teaches them about the sun and the light, but not about how to live. I think one is more, in this situation, one advice is a little more important, right? And, but then as soon as he makes a mistake and tries to assault his daughter, he completely rejects him and takes control of the island. So he was like the king of the island. He controlled everything, and once Prospero learned all he could from him, and he made a bad choice, but he rejects him and curses him. Anyway, what's interesting is that Aimé César, where is he from? Do you know? Oh, merci. Désolé.
Haiti.
Good guess. I think he's from one of them. I think he's from either Martinique or Guadeloupe. Let's switch him around. But he rewrote it, and he called it Une Tempête. So notice real quick, the version from Shakespeare was called
La Tempête.
La Tempête in English. En anglais, c'est
Tempest.
the, especially emphasis on the. And he renamed, not only did he transliterate it, he renamed it Une Tempête. Why do you think he did this? I don't know, it's just conjecture, so any answer is right. Tourner et parler avec un partenaire pour 1 minute et discuter pourquoi est-ce qu'il a changé la à une. Et allez. Understood. Alors, je vais vous arrêter. Donc, dis-le-moi, qu'est-ce que vous pensez?
Oh, okay. Well, you have to call it a tempest because you can't call it the tempest because life contains more than one storm. We're calling it like the storm.
Good point. It's true. So you're saying that César is implicating that there's more than one thing like this happening?
Yeah.
Okay. Good point. Autre chose? Any other ideas? That's okay. It seems like you all agree. That's awesome. Okay? So let's talk about that. Okay? The big difference, most of it was just transliterated from Shakespeare into French. But a big difference was in the first one. This is Caliban here in the first one. This is what he looks like. Well, he's described as less than human. He's some part monster, some part human, and the way that Shakespeare portrays him as trying to molest his daughter means that he's a terrible being. He can't possibly be a human who makes mistakes, right? But this here, in César's version, this is Caliban. So big difference is in César's version, Caliban is a...
Persian.
He's what? Persian? Yeah. He's supposed to be, in this version, he said, at one point, he says, I am all the subjects that you have, implying that I am your subject, I am your... It's okay to say slave, right? Right? In this one, he becomes his slave, and in this one, he literally is his slave. Like, he's literally a slave of African origin, taken from his island, ends up, and someone else is ruling over him, right? So it's interesting. The way that he writes this is at this point, is that his speech and everything, it becomes not about Caliban is just this awful being, it becomes about the colonial and post-colonial relationship, right? So if you have a white master, European master, and you have this colonial who's a slave, who's taken over, it becomes much more a deeper thing. And the idea that it's a tempest, you're exactly right, because it didn't just happen one time, that this was happening all the time. Très bien fait, bravo, vous êtes excellent. Okay? So this idea is that, this relationship is that it, in his version, he doesn't say that, oh, I try to, sorry, start over. It's not that, the way that he writes them, he doesn't necessarily, he's not even doing all the actions. As far as Caliban, he's not doing all these bad things. It's actually that Prospero is projecting his own lascivious intentions and very, like, demonized perceptions of his slave onto him. That, oh, because you are black, because you are not European, because you're my slave, because you want to revolt, you're a bad person. So he's projecting onto him, and Caliban is suffering from the effects of that. And this is part of the post-colonial, even look at the identity of the Caribbean. It's like, who are they as a people anymore? They're no longer African, but they're not European, and oftentimes they're projected on as something that's bad, right? So it's actually a much deeper work, I think, than it goes from this kind of flippant comedy about a wizard being stranded on an island to this much deeper commentary about our world and the post-colonial world. Questions? No? Pas du tout! Huh? Okay. Donc, c'est le temps.
I do have a question. When was that written?
I think it was written in the 60s. So, Aimé Césaire was one of the main writers for La Négritude, kind of the big pushing to, like, La Négritude. Yeah, especially in the Northern Africa, but also in the Caribbean, too. So, I think, I'm pretty sure you can find, it's ironic, I'm pretty sure you can find this in English, even though it was a transliteration of an English work to begin with. I'm pretty sure you can find it translated back into English, right? So, to kind of get you closer to an idea. Or read it yourself. It's pretty good. D'accord? Questions? C'est tout. Pop quiz! Where is Aimé Césaire from? Regionally, not as far as like a specific nation.
Caribbean.
The Caribbean, right? The English Caribbean? Bah non! The French Caribbean, n'est-ce pas? Les Antilles. In French, Antilles. Antillian, the Antilles. Antilles. Très bien. Tout à fait. And what's the name of the play?
Une
This Shakespeare. Yes, and the one from César is
tempête.
Une tempête. Très bien. Excellent. Well, vous êtes excellent. Merci beaucoup. Thanks for having me. And it was truly my pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it.
If you folks have questions for him, we've got a few minutes. That's up to you. It could be about learning languages at the university or anything, any of his travels, any of Seth's travels. Any other questions?
I guess I should put a blurb out about. So, as far as university, they recently voted with the faculty senate, so they changed that. There's now a language requirement for most majors. So most people come in and you have to take at least one full year of a language. So if you've already taken French, I mean, I have several students now who took a little French in high school and they're finishing now to get credit for it. Because 1 year of language in university is like 2 years of high school French, right? So it's much more fast paced. So even if you're not completely sure, you can start out again, and you'll catch up soon. You won't have to be you won't be bored very long. Question?
How many languages do you speak fluently?
Fluently, je parle français tous, but I studied Russian for 3 years, and I studied Irish for 2 years, but anyway. But French and English, they're all the ones I speak. Well enough to read and write and live in Ireland or live in France. Bonne question, merci.
Years ago, the university offered a summer program at Yellow Bay and for various people. Are you ever going to do that again?
That would be really awesome. I imagine the Spanish program might. I know the Alliance Française from Missoula, they offer a summer language French camp. And I think it's up on CV. Or in Georgetown. Yeah, there you go. But currently, probably not though. I think the focus of the language is because there's less funding for language. But it's more because language is not just existing for itself, it's doing language with journalism and language with business and language with collaborating between the different majors, and less so language for the sake of literature and just speaking the language. Which, in some regards, there's some people who want to be literature, but there's also a focus, like, you can use language for other things too. So, there you go.
Any
How
other
about
questions?
your foreign study program? Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you have in the way of foreign study programs at this point?
Like,
For your
like foreign languages that you could take, or as far as like.
Well, no, for the students who want to
Oh.
study in France.
So, like,
Oh, yeah.
In Senegal, or, yeah.
Oui, excellent. En fait, I firmly believe that if you want to study abroad, there's a way to make it happen, especially if you plan from the beginning. The University of Montana has partner universities with several universities around the world, which the best thing about a partner university, it means that we do an exchange where you pay your tuition and someone at that institution pays their tuition, and then you swap places. So you just have to pay for the airfare to get there. And with France, we have, I think, 3 different exchanges. We have an exchange with Toulouse in the south of France by the Pyrenees. You're an hour from the ocean, an hour from the mountains. Pretty nice. We have an exchange with Lille in the east, in the north, and we have an exchange with Lyon. But also, as far as other French language opportunities, there's the ISEP program, which is different from an exchange because you have to pay extra fees. It's different, but that's in several different cities. And the ISEP will focus on language. So if you do the exchange, you'll actually be taking more classes. You'll just be taking them through French. So you might be studying math, but in French, or you'll study geology, but in French when you do the exchange. But if you do ISEP, you're actually taking French language classes in France, and you're taking French culture classes in France. So there you go. But I just advise in general, like study abroad is a great opportunity. Another opportunity to do is to teach abroad. That's what I did in France, where you need to study language 3 years at the university. The U.S. Embassy requires that you be proficient in French to teach in France for this. But you go to France and you get paid to teach English for a year, and then you can come back and finish. Or you can finish university and then go do it, and then come back. So there's a lot of opportunities. And even if you don't want to go to a foreign language country, I still strongly advise you to study abroad, because it's one of the few opportunities you'll have to do it. So just leave for a year, live somewhere else, and have no responsibilities. If you have kids, if you have a house, if you have a car, it's harder to leave for that long of a time. But in your university studies, even if you want to go, for example, we went to Cork in Ireland for a year, and it was great. I thought, oh, I speak French. I've been to Europe. I'm fine. Ireland is just like Europe. No. Ireland is completely different, and even though they speak English, this is really hard to understand. They say, what's the cockfight? Where's the fire? And you're like, oh my goodness. But, so you're still picking up a different culture, but you still get to study in English. So it's worthwhile regardless. Study abroad in a language or study abroad in English. Great opportunities. Any other questions? Or work abroad or volunteer abroad. There's a lot of options.
Merci.
De rien.